Calling all men, your story matters. For too long, men have been told to be strong by staying silent. But silence can be heavy, and the world needs to hear the truth behind the strong face. Unmasking the stories behind the strong faces, all-male anthology releasing January 1st, 2026 that will feature 10 men willing to open up, be transparent, and share their journey through some of life's most challenging, heartbreaking, and life-changing moments. We are looking for men who will be authentic, tell it like it really happened, be transparent, share the struggles and the victories, be inspiring, leave readers with hope and courage. Your story could help another man rise from rock bottom, give a father hope, or show a young boy that strength comes through honesty, not hiding. Have you always wanted to be an author? Have you always wanted to tell your story, but didn't know where to start? Now is your chance, not only to become a published author, but to share your journey alongside a brotherhood of men in a collective creation that will inspire the world. In unmasking the stories behind the strong faces, you will share your personal story in a safe, professionally guided process. Have your chapter professionally edited and published. Gain the opportunity to inspire countless readers around the world. Release date, January 1st, 2026. To join, contact Stephanie M. Seaton at stephaniemseat@gmail.com. Men hurt too. Men heal too. And when men speak, the world listens. Be part of this groundbreaking project.
You are about to watch a new episode of My Brother's Keeper podcast, a safe space for men here on the Stephanie M. Seaton Sunday Show channel. Healing, empowerment, transformation. Thank you for tuning in.
Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the My Brother Keepers podcast. We are excited to be here this evening. As always, on the fourth Sunday of each month, we take time out to go live with you to give you an opportunity to share in with some brothers who are just kind of coming together and speaking on the topics that oftentimes we don't openly get a chance to discuss as men. So this is a safe space for us to do that, and we appreciate anybody that has the opportunity to tune in. We hope that you will be blessed, you'll be impacted by our conversations this evening, again, as we share in a very vulnerable and transparent way. Hosting this evening, my name is Joseph Roberts, a part of the My Brother's Keepers podcast, and with me, we have some very special guests. We got our brother Bolin in the building this evening. Of course, author of Christian self-help books. He's been on the show before. Awesome man of God, awesome brother. We're excited to have him back. We also have with us Dr. Gregory Tate with Team Tail Ministries. Again, another phenomenal brother. Had an opportunity to meet him on the last podcast. He's new to the show and hanging out with us again. So we're excited to have that brother back. Of course, we got brother Melvin Lee, who's new to the podcast with us this evening. We welcome you, brother Melvin. Thank you so much for being on board with us and joining the team. We're excited to get your input and perspective on topics this evening. Our normal host, Mr. Hilton, he's on his way in. He'll be with us shortly. Had a previous engagement, so he's a man on the move, but he's going to be joining us shortly. We're also looking forward to brother Carl Roberts to jump in with us as well. And then, of course, we have our other new panelist that is going to be joining us. I should say has joined our group. Mr. Derek Durden. He's not with us at this time, but he will be. You will be seeing the opportunity to see his face and engage in his conversations with us as well. So as you can see, the team is expanding. So it's always good to have some fresh perspectives on board, and I'm just excited to be here this evening. So again, welcome, brothers. Thank you so much for tuning in this evening and joining in on the conversation. How the brothers doing tonight?
All right. Excited to be here. Thank you, Joseph.
Awesome. So tonight, what we're going to focus in on is our theme for this evening, of course, is men carry deep hurts too, often silently. This is sort of a follow-up, if you will, from our July conference, the Men Hurt Too conference, to be specific. It was an opportunity for us as men to come together in a safe space. We covered a vast amount of topics. Conversation got very deep, very, very intense, to the point that we actually had to shut it off because we just didn't want to stop talking. We were just enjoying ourselves that much. Brothers went well over, and we just had to like bring it to a close. Not because it wasn't going well, but because we had so much to go on, and it let us know that we needed to expand on that even further. So we got future conferences coming up, both here in the Dallas area in 2026, as well as we'll be traveling on the road into Georgia next year as well. So again, exciting stuff coming aboard as a result of that Men Hurts 2 conference. And so we're going to use this evening to kind of recap and discuss some of the topics that we discussed, as well as some other issues as well. But while we try to keep it structured, we also keep it loose. So wherever the conversation goes is where it goes and where it flows. So that's how we're going to hang with this. So again, this evening, this is a safe space for honesty and transparency. And we want to just remind you, as our listeners that are tuning in, this is just not about, this is about healing, but it's not about judgment. This is a judgment-free zone, and that's how we operate. That's what we're about here. So, and it's so very important, especially when it comes to men, because again, we oftentimes, just because of the nature of being men, we've unfortunately been raised, and many of us have been raised to think that, it was a bad thing to be vulnerable. It was a bad thing to be transparent. It was a bad thing to share our feelings, to share our hurts, to share our pain. So we're trying to flip the script here, and again, hopefully empower some other brothers who've been feeling like this and been wanting an opportunity to know that, to be confirmed that it's okay. It's okay to let it out. It's okay to feel some kind of way, because again, as our conference stated, men hurt too. We just process a little bit. There's our brother Hilton. Brother Hilton, thank you so much for joining in with us. We got our normal host in the building, but he's jumping on board. So I'm glad he's hanging with us. He's making his ride back from out of town. So Brother Hilton, we thank you so much for joining us, man. Good to see you. Good to see you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right. So the first topic we want to jump into this evening, which is again a common subject matter that men oftentimes deal with, and it's a struggle to talk about, unfortunately, is when it comes to both marriage and divorce. So as we get into this, we have to understand that men often hurt deeply from broken unions, failed marriages, and the silence around their emotional pain. Unfortunately, a lot of times when marriages go off the rails, usually the emphasis oftentimes is on how the woman is impacted in that marriage, and subsequently in that divorce. But and not to dismiss or minimize what those feelings are and those emotions are, but what doesn't oftentimes get talked about is the male side of the coin, whether he was at fault, whether he was not at fault, how he's processing, how he's dealing with it, if there's kids involved, things of that nature. How does he navigate through that? So the first question I'd like to throw out, and I don't know specifically with the brothers I have online with us this evening, I don't know if any of you have experienced dealing with a divorce, or of someone who's close to you who dealt with that. But I am curious to find out, when we think about divorce, how does divorce or even a failing marriage, maybe it hasn't gotten to the point of divorce, but maybe you've been in a marriage that was kind of on the brinks, it was on the rope, so to speak. How does that impact a man's sense of identity and worth? And I think I want to turn it over, since I got Hilton on now, because he gives us the philosophical, psychological breakdown of it all. What would you say to, I'm sure you've had an opportunity to counsel some brothers who've been in this situation. What would you say is the man's sense of identity and worth, how it's impacted in these type of situations?
Well, from that perspective, I think that because people don't really know what marriage is, they go into marriage with this false sense of this false perception of what it's supposed to be. I think they go in with it with a silver screen idea of a happily ever after type thing, or we love a happy endings type story. So I think that really, because two people don't really know what they're getting into, and then they don't find out until they've been in it who the real person is. And so and then I think there's a communicative barrier there as well. I think communication is the rise and fall of every relationship at the core of it. Now we can say finances, we can say infidelity, but at the core of it, the issue is always communication. So I think in terms of the men the hurt that men go through is finding out what they did, what we wish we did know before we said I do.
Mhm.
And the hurt that comes from that is not only disappointing in the failed marriage, but disappointed in self. And the perception of being disappointed in self, a lot of the times we're extremely, extremely hard on ourselves, and we put ourselves down not only for the failed marriage, but making the decision to give away so many years of our lives. A lot of times we feel like there's a waste as well, especially when we go into to the divorce aspect of it. So I think the misconception of what marriage really is, as opposed to how society defines it and how the Bible really defines it, and how God really intended for marriage to be. And then when it turns out to be something other than that fairy tale story that we think about, then it comes not only as a loss, but it comes as a psychological demolition, if you will. You know what I'm saying? And men, as hard as we try to be, in some instances, I think we're more emotional than women, and we hold on to that disappointment for a long period of time. And I think it's devastating to a man. And when I worked in the mental health part of the Terry County Jail, we did mental health assessments for the men. Men are 4 times more likely to be suicidal and complete the suicide mission. Women are 3 times more likely to attempt. We are 4 times more likely to complete the suicide. And men who have attempted, I think about 75% of the men that I've interviewed, they attempted, and we asked, what was your reason for the attempt? It was because of a breakup or a divorce, or having to do something with a toxic or failed relationship. That was the reason for 75% of the men. And so I think we take it a lot harder, much more harder than women tend to think. And because we numb our emotions, and we play the hard role, the hard armored role, I think women tend to think that we don't care. But that hard role that we play is just another emotional reaction. So just because we respond differently to our emotions than women do, doesn't make us less emotional. But I think because we're more guarded than women, that's what makes us more emotional than women, because we're more guarded. But yeah, that's my spill on that. I don't know if I answered the question.
Oh, you did, and you added a little extra to it. But you hit some very good points there. I do want to hear from the other gentlemen. Anybody want to chime in on this subject? How do you see the impact of on the man when he's dealing with a failing relationship, or if it goes to the far extreme of a divorce? I know we got a couple of pastors online. You probably counseled some men in this very situation. What has been some of your experiences in that? Feel free, anybody chime in.
Well, I'll go ahead. So I was very candid the last time I was part of this podcast about our own situation. So I was in a marriage with severe mental health issues. Within the first year, it was just so incredibly overwhelming. It was like boot camp of what mental health crises can be like in a marriage. I was totally unprepared. And of course, I really like how Hilton mentioned, how the world tends to make us think about marriage. You're set up in such an unhealthy way. It's not aligned with how God set up marriage to be. It's all about, what can this person do for me? And if they're good enough, then our marriage is going to be great. It's all about what I'm going to get out of it, instead of loving that person with weaknesses and all, and just, that kind of healthy biblical perspective, covenant with God, and being the selfless, husbands, love your wives, even as Christ also loved the church. That kind of maturity just typically isn't in there. And so I found myself, fortunately, I chose to talk with a counselor because I was imploding. I felt very insecure. That's not the right word. I was losing my self-confidence. So in terms of the theme, what we're talking about right now, how does it impact men? For me, I was like, just into a depression and losing my self-confidence. And it did lead me to seek out counseling, which thankfully set me on a better path. He was a Christian counselor, but just some thoughts there that, yes, it can be really devastating. But the great news is that it did help me get onto a path of healthier assessment of who I am, what I was taking away that was not healthy, and getting me on a path of a better definition of what Christian marriage really is supposed to be.
Mm-hmm. Well, awesome insight on that, Brother Melvin. I know you are our new cohort on the panel. I'm interested in hearing your thoughts on this topic.
Well, I mean, I didn't get to go to you guys' conference, but on my perspective, it could be something deeply rooted trauma. And when you don't know about marriage, there's no great blueprint for marriage, and it's trial and error. And of course, especially African American men, especially you got a little age on you, talk that you don't cry, you don't show your feelings and emotions. It's supposed to be tough, which that's hogwash. It's okay to do that as a man. It's okay to seek counsel and therapists. And I think it's all about communicating and working your way through as a man and seeking some help. But a lot of times it's deal with some maybe deeply rooted trauma where here it is where, maybe some that wasn't there, or mom may not have been there, and just an unbalanced thing going on.
I think you hit on a very good point when you talk about the trauma or perhaps the unresolved trauma, because you think about some young men perhaps who grew up in broken homes where they saw a failed marriage or failed relationship between mother and father, and while they weren't directly in that marriage, they were impacted by it. And so is it possible that you carry some of that into when you have the opportunity yourself to get into a marriage? Do you by default carry some of that into it, and whether you realize it or not? And then if yours doesn't work out, you almost feel like, I don't know if you feel like you've been jinxed, if you've been cursed, if you will, because you feel like you're repeating the same pattern that you saw your parents do, or in some instances even your grandparents have done with the failed marriage. So I can definitely see the connect between, perhaps some unresolved trauma, some hurt, some pains that were in play even before the marriage even started. And then what was already mentioned, when we talk about just having this whole fairy tale idea about what marriage is supposed to be, that, he's cute, she's cute, we're going to have a big, pretty wedding, a lot of people are going to come, they're going to give us lots of gifts, and everything's going to be happy-go-lucky, and we're never going to have any struggles or any challenges because we've always got along so well. But once for any of us who've been in marriages or actively are in marriages, you understand that it's work. It's work that goes into that, and when you stand up at that altar and you take those vows, especially when we start talking about for the better and for the worse, that's a lot of people dismiss that. And as a result of them dismissing that, not really taking it to heart, when the worst comes, when the difficult comes, they don't know how to receive that. They don't know how to operate that. And the first instinct is, if you're not in the right mindset, the first instinct is self-preservation. I'm gonna go for mine. And if self-preservation means I'm gonna run because it's getting hard, I'm gonna run because it's tough, because it's difficult. That's what we do. Or you might stay, but now you're taking it out on that other spouse. You're being abusive or mistreating them in some kind of way, be it physically, be it mentally, be it emotionally, be it verbally, whatever. So I think all of those things come to play. What's your take, Dr. Gregory? I'm curious to hear your side of this.
I think it's a complex question that cannot be solved in a very symptomatic way. A lot of people needed to understand that marriage is a multiple of things. Marriage is a ministry. Marriage is a magnifying glass, and marriage is a monument. It is a ministry because it's the joining of two individuals that now become one flesh, and the purpose is to have dominion and to be fruitful and multiply under the hands and under the guidance of the Lord Almighty, Jesus Christ. It's a magnifying glass because it's simply this: all your flaws are on blast, as you will. All your weaknesses are on blast. All your shortcomings are on blast. If you are being vulnerable in this marriage, there is nothing that you can hide from your spouse, and it is you are raw and the naked. If you would imagine like an Adam and Eve situation, to where um, everything that is Adam and everything that is Eve is present, and they cannot hide anything. It is also a monument in a way that you guys are building together. More importantly, more appropriately, vocabulary word would be an altar. It is something that you guys build together and you sacrifice daily. And so I believe it is a complex answer because there's so many different factions to it. Was who's at fault, or was it an abusive marriage? How did it dissipate? For example, though you would think the numbers would have spiked during COVID because we heard of so many breakups during COVID, but yet the numbers only went up almost barely double digits, but there was a lot of split ups where they didn't officially, quote unquote, divorce. But what happened during COVID? We got up and close and personal with people that we said that we loved and said that we were covenant with, but it got so close that, you know what, for a 60 plus day stretch, I had to wake up and be in this person's face. They had to be in my proxy for 24 hours a day. I could not escape to work. I could not escape to go here. I could not escape to go there. So that's where that magnifying glass comes into play, to where everything that we've done, said, and was trying to do got magnified. Like, you know what, there's nothing that we can hide anymore. But going back to the question, as far as failure, I think men take it on deeply in a way that it's either a win or it's a loss. And we in this country have a hard time in the western side of the globe understanding that failure is a negative thing. Where a lot of other places, failure is an opportunity to learn something or an opportunity to grow. Though we have though we have, quote unquote, lost some time, I'm a believer. I'm just crazy and have crazy faith and believe that God is a restorer of time. He's a restorer of things, and he's also a restorer of relationships. So though it's easy to say and hard to walk through, I've seen God personally restore time where I think that I've lost. But my mindset has had a shift from failure to, okay, this is a learning opportunity. Okay, yeah, all right. I felt like I've come up short in this situation, and I felt like time was gone, and I may have hurt somebody, or may have hurt me. But you know what? Praise be unto God that I am still here and I still be able to move forward. Is it painful? Absolutely. Is it hard? Absolutely. But to see that, okay, this is what I'm not going to do anymore. This is what I'm not going to participate in moving forward if I choose to move another, and get married again. So it's very difficult to pinpoint just one specific answer, as there is a mirage and there is a multiple of different scenarios to where how men internalize this and don't speak on, because we are people that internalize a lot of hurt, we don't speak up about it. So a lot of men be like, okay, I'm about to split up with my wife or split up with my girl. You won't hear about it until they're getting an apartment by themselves, until they're moving in with somebody else. And a lot of that is difficult because we have been trained that don't show your flaws, don't show your failures, don't show your weakness, and don't show that you're hurting, because it equals vulnerability. And vulnerability equates to weakness. And my Bible tells me this, that, you know, in my weakness, his strength is made perfect. So at our weakest point, that's where God's strength shows off the most. But if we cannot show our weakness or in a safe place with somebody, it is difficult for us to see how God can come in strong when we don't allow our weakness to be given to him the way that he asked it to give it to us. Give it to him, excuse me.
Yeah. All right. I appreciate that perspective. And as you said, you know, this question is very loaded. in terms of, how does a failing marriage or a divorce impact a man's sense of identity and worth? Because it's such an emotionally filled moment. And unless you've gone through something like that, only then can you really understand it. I mean, I've had the pleasure of being married for, 21 years, but prior to that, unfortunately, I personally had to experience what it was like to go through a divorce. And I would say first and foremost, it's something I would never wish even on my worst enemy, because it's not like the traditional girlfriend boyfriend situation where you say I quit you, I break up with you, we don't go together no more. It's different than that. When we talk about the two becoming one, when you go through a divorce, and you pretty much ask any man or any woman this question, if you talk about what does it feel like, if they were to be honest in their answer, it literally feels like that two becoming one is almost like, even though you're physically not being ripped apart, emotionally, mentally, that's how you feel, like as if you're being just pulled apart. And it's unlike any other feeling that of all the disappointments and letdowns in life that I've ever experienced, that has its own unique feeling to it. It leaves a bad taste in your mouth for quite a while, regardless of how you might appear to be in front of other people or anything like that. It just hurts on a whole different level. So it is definitely one of those things that can have an impact. But since we are talking specifically about men, I think that's why a lot of men, when they go through situations like this, a lot of times the question comes up, how is everybody else going to treat me in this situation? Will I be supported? Not, and when I say supported, doesn't necessarily mean you took my side over my spouse's side or whatever, but just supported and understanding, like I'm hurting too in this. This is something most people, when they get married, they don't get married with the expectation that, oh, I'll get married for now, but I'll probably be divorced in X number of years. We when we thinking about going into it, we're thinking about it primarily as if it's going to be a forever thing. So then when it doesn't happen that way, it can be very emotionally damaging, and you can feel that sense of isolation or that lack of support, particularly, which is what I want to get into the next point with this, is how it impacts those of us who go through divorce, but we also happen to be men of faith. We're believers and we're in the church, because there's some men who are going through a divorce or been in a divorce who they may feel like they're shut out of their church, because it's almost like they got the plague on them or something, because they had a failed marriage, if you will, and definitely don't be in a leadership position of some sort within the body, how you might feel that way or what have you. So with that said, when we speak about church and community in general, how do we think that the church could do a better job at ministering to divorced men, whether they're a divorced man who wasn't a believer and he's trying to get right and trying to feel accepted in a place that's supposed to be non-judgment, or if he's already in the house, he's already a believer, and he's gone through this unfortunate situation of a divorce. What can the church do to be more supportive, to be more receiving, and again, not so much in side taking, but in helping that brother process through and deal with whatever it is that he's struggling with as a result of such a traumatic event?
I think the church would do better at understanding, and a lot of them do. I don't want to speak about the bride of Christ, because I am the church, and Jesus loves his bride. But I will say it in this manner: if we go into the church understanding that we are a collection of broken pieces on our way to be masterpieces, we understand that there's grace there to grow, and there's grace there to be accepted. Though marriage is a coming together, it is not one's complete identity. I've gone on 18 years of marriage, and though I get charged with, if I go somewhere in public, people ask me, "Where's my wife?" and vice versa. When she goes out, like, where's your husband? It gives us a sense of joy knowing that we are viewed as a union. But there is still individually us coming together. I was me before I met my wife. My wife was her before she met me. Though we are collectively joined together and we are one, there's still an individual that is us, that is healthy for us to still hold on to and have. And so I believe the church is a hospital that needs to nurture those that are in need of pain, or that are in pain, that have gone through things, and that are hurting. We all are hurting in some capacity. That's why we go to church. We don't know God as a healer because unless we're in pain. We don't know God as a savior unless we need saving. We don't know that He's Lord unless we are in need of a commander over our life. So whether I'm coming to church because I'm broken in this area, you're coming to church because you're broken in this area, it does not mean that your brokenness is lighter and better than my brokenness over here. We're all broken people. And like I said earlier, broken pieces on our way to masterpieces because of His hand. And if we can understand that in some way, shape, or form, from the pulpit to the last pew, that we're all a workmanship with God, I think grace can do its thing the way it needs to do.
Well said. Well said. I think to kind of bring perspective to this conversation, I guess at the end of the day, is that as a man, if you do have the unfortunate experience of going through a divorce, what we want, the message we want to send to you is that it's okay for you to feel hurt, a sense of brokenness as a result of that broken covenant. Even if it was your fault, and I say that not literally, because I believe in any divorce, there's two sides to it. Both parties have a role in it. So to label degrees or what have you, I think is unfair. But even if as a man that perhaps you didn't step up, or you didn't do all the things that were perhaps decent and in order, let's just say in the case of infidelity, or some other form of neglect, if you will, even in those situations, as Dr. Gregory so eloquently put, we serve a forgiving God, we serve a loving God, and even in the midst of you maybe not having been the best man that you could have been in that marriage, there is an opportunity available for redemption, for restoration, for that bounce back, that comeback, where you can not only, as a result of this experience, and we spoke about there, and I'm glad that you pointed out about how we in the world we tend to view failure as a negative, or a loss as a negative, instead of saying that the loss is actually a lesson, that the loss of the failure is actually an opportunity for me to grow, to develop, to become better. I would even go as far as to say that sometimes God, not that God loves divorce, because we know that He doesn't, but sometimes He allows it to play out, if for no other reason, to draw you closer to Him. Because when you go through something like that, when you go through a traumatic situation, sometimes to get our attention, we have to be allowed to go through whatever it is that we're going through, to the point where we can't fix it on our own. That we need a higher power that's bigger than us, that's bigger than our bank accounts, that's bigger than our statuses and our roles or anything like that. And I can guarantee you go through a divorce, or you go through something similar traumatic event, you will reach that point where it is way bigger than you, and you can't fix it, and God is going to be the only one to turn to in that moment. But that's not a bad thing. That's actually a good thing, because He wants to be in relationship with you. He wants to strengthen you and build you up, particularly when you are at your lowest and most broken of moments. He wants to be able to step in and say, it's still going to be all right. I still love you. I still think highly of you. We all make mistakes. Somebody else may have not gone through a divorce or had a failed relationship, but that doesn't make them any better, of any greater standing than you. And so I'm still here to support you, encourage you, love on you, and again, restore you so that you might even perhaps be in a position where you could take what was once a pain to you and actually be a blessing to somebody else, to share what that experience was like and be able doing what we're doing right now, sharing some of the hurts and the frustrations and the pains that we've dealt with, but being able to take those moments and pour back into somebody else so that they could be helped, so that they could be uplifted, so they could be encouraged in such moments. So all of these things are things that we want to keep in mind as we cover these various topics, because it is important to understand that that these letdowns, these broken moments like this are going to happen, unfortunately, in some of our lives, but there is an opportunity, there is a pathway for redemption, there is a pathway for recovery, and there may even be an open door, and I'm a testimony to that. There may be an open door for you to do it again and get it right the next time around, and be able to talk about how, and it didn't work the first time, but now I'm in a situation where I'm more mature. I understand the perspective of it better. I'm not in this fairy tale cloud of thinking that everything's just going to be perfectly fine. I love the way my pastor put it the last time he was speaking on marriage. He said it literally should be a competition between you and your spouse on who's going to outserve who, because it's a servant type of relationship. It's like, how can I give to you? How can I show you? How can I love on you? And how can you love on me? Versus us taking it as what's in it for me. Because that's a lot of times when we go into marriages, that's how we think of it as, is what can I get out of it instead of what can I pour into it, that kind of thing. So again, this is good subject matter, and we could talk on just the show alone just on this, but I want us to cover a few other topics that kind of got captured in our conference, but are still very relevant, even whether you were in attendance at our conference or not. Second subject I wanted to tap into has to deal with fatherlessness and the generational wounds that come along with that. And what I'm speaking of is we have some men, and it could be very well be some of us here on this call, where we grew up in homes where our dad wasn't around. So we didn't have that opportunity to build that father-son relationship. Or perhaps you grew up in a home where dad was around physically, but emotionally, relationally, he was not. So to that, I want to throw out the question, because again, many men do carry pain from absentee fathers or those strained father-son bonds. So I'd like to discuss, how has growing up without a father, or perhaps an emotionally distant father, how does that shape one's manhood? I'm gonna throw it back to Hilton on that. Man growing up, and we talked about this at the conference, growing up in the home, no father in the home, or dad's there, but he's disconnected. How does that affect that young man growing up and ultimately shaping his overall manhood?
So as a man, because when I was a kid, I didn't quite understand the effect of it. But as a man, repeating some of the behaviors of my fathers, even though they were not there, it becomes prevalent. So the lack of knowledge of that can also be a big thing too, in terms of how we repeat cycles that our fathers did. Like, neither one of my fathers were there for me. And what I mean by that is, I have my biological father's first name and I have my stepdad's last name. That's because my mom stepped out on my dad and I was conceived in infidelity. Right. I think that we are not aware of the biological component that is passed through that act of infidelity and how it is pushed on to your child, even the emotions of it. Like, the child is going to suffer whatever type of emotion, whatever type of behavior that we are exhibiting through that aspect of having sexual activity. So as a man, I understood what I was going through as a child. I developed a truth and I developed a false perception of what manhood was and fatherhood was, because I was raised by my grandmother, and my grandfather he lived there, but he was always out in the streets. So I didn't get much of a I didn't get much of a lesson from him in terms of manhood as well. So I think it is deep. I think it deeply affects the child from a psychological perspective, but the child is not aware of the effect that it has on him or her. And when they grow up and exhibit some of the same behaviors, regardless of the lack of environmental influence, the biological component is still there, and we can still repeat those behaviors and not know why and not be aware of it. And because some people say, well, since my father wasn't around, I shouldn't be exhibiting these type of behaviors. And that's not necessarily true. Especially when it comes with the terms called epigenetics, and I did some research on it at grad school, and I'm doing some right now. Epigenetics is that generational trauma that's been passed down to us since slavery, since our ancestors. So we inherit that genetic component from our slave masters when they separated our men and our women and sold to this, that, and the third, and all the other stuff. So some things we just are unaware of in terms of the psychological effect, but still it's going to be exhibited in our behavior. So the toll and the psychological effect on that is very huge.
Wow. That's again, that very, very good points you hit on that right there. Anybody else want to tap in on this? What do you see is the impact on manhood when dad's not around, whether it's physically not around or just relationally he's not around? How does that affect that young man's manhood?
This this subject charges me up because this is exactly what I studied for my dissertation. And so having this topic is so well needed because our men are not just thirsty for it, we're dehydrated from this very topic. And I believe that a lot of us are because let me break it down statistically. 3 out of 5 of Black households, children do not know what it is to have a male figure in the home. 80% of Black men believe in a higher power or God, do not go attend a church or walk in a church or view it online, though we believe in God. Over 70% of our churches are women inside the church. And so there's so many different factors to it, but if we do not see it, it's hard to become it. And I believe God is such a good God, and God is a God of example. For example, let me put it to you in this way. In the Old Testament, we had the tabernacle, and then you had the Holy of Holies, and you had the presence of God, and he was tangibly there with the children. Even you had the Ark of the Covenant where they got to carry a sense of his presence everywhere they went. In the New Testament, it says that Jesus tabernacled with us. That means his flesh was the tabernacle, and he walked among us, and he did everything that we've experienced, that we were going to experience, and what we had to go through. He walked among us. We got to see what it is to walk this thing out as a believer because he was with us. And now that he's ascended to heaven, but we have him in our hearts, so that now we still have that tangible presence. We get to see his move and his acts on a daily basis, or however that you see it, we got to see it. And so if our children don't have the opportunity to see it, it has a grave effect. And even the children that do get to see it, they see it in a negative way. A lot of them do, because they think love is an iron fist. They think love is a discipline in the hand. They think love is consequences from coming from a man. And so a lot of our children have a hard time, even when a male is present, because I don't know what one looks like. I don't know how to experience one. If you listen to a lot of our athletes that make it to a certain level, they say, who was the most influential man in your life? It was a coach. It was some kind of teacher. Why? Because you know what? They saw beyond my athletic ability and saw a person in me. Much like a marriage, not what can you do for me, but how can I pour into you, young man? How can I see you as a fountain and not as a drain? How can I take a piece of me and put it inside of you, and then you take it way further than I ever did? And so the effects of not seeing a father is gravely detrimental, and it is difficult because now you can morph it into another section to where when they see another man, it's not like I see and I acknowledge a man. Now it's conflict. Now it's competition. Now I'm sizing you up. Now is, what are you trying to do? What are you trying to take from me? Because my father was not in my life, but when he did was in my life, he took from me. So I equate manhood as another man is trying to take from me. So why are you here? What are you trying to take? What are you trying to get out of me that I don't want to give up? So now I see you as a threat. And so there's so many different layers of not seeing a father, not being experienced with a father that we need to heal. And then it even goes back to our first days upon this country that was thrown on top of us, that we didn't ask for, that we were separated from each other purposely. When slaves had children, they purposely sold them off somewhere else. Or when there was a union, they purposely separated them. And I'm sorry, I'm just bold enough to say it, division is witchcraft. And so they implemented division all over the place so the family unit cannot be together. So we cannot have a conscious mind, we cannot have a unified mind, and we cannot have a mind that's understanding what family is, which is the first institution that God created. So we have a difficult time with this concept of family, because every time we put a foot forward in that step forward of unity, the rug is pulled from us, it's torn from us, it's pushed away from us, or we look funny, we look weird. I live in Texas, most specifically in Dallas, and there are still times where my wife and I, with our children, will go to a restaurant and we get looked at like we have two heads growing out our neck, because it's still unfamiliar in a lot of places that a Black family is unified and together. And so we're fighting against that aspect, and we're fighting about the absentee aspect. And there's just so many layers, but it is detrimental. But here's the thing that's beautiful about it, Minister Joseph, it's not hopeless. It's not hopeless in whatsoever. There is still not just hope, but there is a path forward to healing and restoration, even though we don't physically see one in the house.
Wow. I love your perspective on that. Brother Boland, I think you ready to chime in. What's your thoughts on that?
Boy, I really appreciate all that you said, Dr. Gregory. That was some great stuff. I took down my fake virtual background on purpose because I thought, in the context of what we're talking about, vulnerability and openness, I thought, the fake backgrounds are so typical of our society and the way we think and the way we think we have to communicate. So I'll show you just a bit about what's in my background. I live in a tiny house. My wife is completely disabled. I'm overwhelmed because I have to do pretty much everything. And I share this space with a recording voiceover booth that now is going to be pretty much useless because AI is going to take over about 90% of the voiceover work that's out there. And I can't keep up, and there's just handicapped equipment all over the place. And so that's a quick 30-second view of the reality of me instead of that beautiful grand piano that's back there. And I think this is kind of typical of, I think, the value of a show like this to try to help folks take down the veneer and talk about what's really happening, because I think I have a hunch that you brothers right now and those listening now have a very quick, more realistic window into who I am. And I think it feels good if I feel that connection with other people and I can be that open. I think that's helpful. And then that helps me engage with other people. So I share that just as an example of like this topic of fatherlessness and these related issues. I will share that I also had a father issue that, although my father was present and he was a good man in many ways, had some major issues, like the most socially unskilled and the most irritable person who was conflict surrounded him and was such a bad example of how to interact with the world that it really, really affected me badly. And a lot of other things that the word father and heavenly father became troublesome for me. And I will tell you, I'm over 60, and it's only been in the last year that I've finally felt like I've gotten past that. And it took me, this is kind of funny, AI helps. I actually did a search on attributes of a good positive attributes of fatherhood. Give me 25 attributes of a great father with a brief description of each. And I lined those up with Heavenly Father. And I went through one by one. Is that what Heavenly Father's like? Yeah. Is he like that too? Yeah. Was my father like that? Yeah, he lined up on quite a few. But it helped me to separate what, because I think it can create the conflict around the father, the earthly weakness father can really interfere with our spiritual relationship with Heavenly Father. It really did for me. And my father was, in a lot of measures, a pretty good guy.
Love that perspective, and again, I appreciate your transparency, because as you stated, this is what we're vibing on this evening. Is we want to be transparent, we want to be vulnerable, and so I love the fact that you felt comfortable amongst other men and amongst the general public viewing audience, to share just a glimpse of what life is like for you, because this is what we want to encourage our brothers all around the world to do more of, to be open, to be transparent, and not be ashamed. Because just like my situation may not be your situation, but we're all going through something. We're all battling through something. And that's very important. And it's a great segue as we look into delving into our next segment here, and when we start talking about the subject of the hidden traumas. Whether and one of the more common hidden traumas that men unfortunately have to deal with is the trauma that oftentimes surrounds sexual abuse of some sort, molestation, things of that nature. And so with that said, I'd like to kind of pose the question to the panel here. Why do so many men stay silent when it comes to the subject of sexual abuse or molestation? I can't say that I've personally gone through that. I've known some people who have, but just out of curiosity, is it just because of the subject matter, or is it just falling just with everything else that we just don't like to share our shortcomings, our mishaps, or anything of that sort? I want to jump to my brother Melvin. How to let you lead us on this subject? Why do you think that men would stay silent about subjects like sexual abuse or molestation if they've gone through something like that?
I think they don't want to be labeled as, something wrong with an individual. People, we already prejudge people already. And then when you start talking about certain things, and especially some vulnerability, people start, of course, their judgment comes out. And they don't want to feel that way. Just my perspective.
Yeah, and I can understand that. I mean, I think that's a fair statement. I can't imagine, if I were to have gone through something like that personally, I wouldn't be, eager to go run out and tell anybody. Because it's kind of like you said, it's that struggle between I need to let somebody know because this is happening to me, but then at the same time, if I tell them, what will they think about me? Will they believe me? Even if they do believe me, will that be a forever stigma on me? Will my masculinity be questioned from this point on? Will I be looked at as the victim, or would I be viewed as the one who perhaps welcomed it? What exactly was that situation, and who was the perpetrator of it? I think can matter. Especially if it's somebody that was close to me. Or somebody that I supposedly should have, that it was somebody that I should have been able to trust, some trusting adult. Again, it could have been a father figure. It could have been someone we've heard of that. We've heard of, being violated in the church. You've heard a number, or perhaps like I said, a coach or a teacher. It's when you take that from somebody, that innocence, especially if it happens to you as a child, you take that innocence away. I can't get that back, and so you can only imagine for those who've ever experienced something like this, what that must possibly feel like. And I would not dare to sit here and say I understand, because I don't know what that's like. And again, I wouldn't wish it on anybody, and I can't imagine the emotional and mental processing of that. And if you would, Hilton, jump in on this, because I know in your studies and perhaps even in some of your counseling, you may have dealt with somebody who's faced this, and it may be something that again happened to them as a child, and they're still struggling with it well into adulthood. Can you talk about a little bit of that from the psychological perspective from how does that impact those brothers who go through that kind of situation? If you're talking, your mic is muted. I don't know if you okay, we'll jump back to Hilton in a moment. While Hilton is getting his mic straight, Dr. Gregory, what's your thoughts on this? Why do you think men stay silent about something like sexual abuse or molestation?
Statistically, it is shown that most of the time that if a young male is molested, it comes from a family member or someone close thereof. It's shown, statistically, it's shown. So a lot of it is the shame of, well, how come I didn't recognize it? How come I didn't see it? Did I invite this person? What is it? What is wrong with me that I invited this predator to latch onto me in that manner? And so there's a lot of shame that is associated with that, and it's a painful, powerless situation to where not only is my innocence is taken, my power is taken. Because especially in this country, we look at something horrific as that as being female.
Mhm.
Only females get attacked like that. Only females go through that. Only females have to endure something like that. And so for it to happen to me, like, is my masculinity in question? Is my manhood in question? Will I not be accepted into a men's circle because this has happened to me? And because shame is attached to it, a lot of times shame is also the next step of shame is silence. And then it goes to withdrawal. And then it goes into depression and all these other different things. But after shame comes silence. Why would I talk about it? Why would I speak out about something that I am afraid of, that I feel powerless to, and I've already been manipulated and I have been inappropriately touched physically? I am not about to allow someone to inappropriately touch me emotionally or psychologically as well as a result of me speaking out. So it is who can I trust now?
Mm-hmm.
Especially if the majority of the percentage of young boys that get molested are from family members or people close thereof, and I'm supposed to trust them and they violated me, who am I supposed to trust now? And especially for Black men, trust does not come easy. It takes a while for us to build trust with somebody. And once that is broken, a lot of men will say, you're an outcast to me. Emotionally, I have exiled you from communication or proxy to me. I believe those factors do come into play when you're talking about this very specific topic, sir.
Yeah. This is a very, very sensitive subject. And like you said, there have been many men, some that we may know very well, some that we might even consider to be the most masculine of men in terms of their physical build, the way that they behave when it comes to dealing with the opposite sex and things of that nature. We might even idolize them to the point where I wish I was that kind of brother, not knowing that very man that we're looking at has gone through that trauma and perhaps has not even healed from it, and that he's carrying himself in a way that doesn't even feel natural to him because of what has been, how he's been impacted, that loss of innocence, that loss of that sense of being feeling powerless in a moment such as that. So yeah, I would definitely agree that this is, it's hard to imagine a brother just walking up and saying, hey, this is what happened to me, accept me, be cool with me, receive me, because again, we live in a world that doesn't that doesn't suggest that that's how it goes. That oftentimes they get labeled, they get, they get blamed, they get isolated, if you will. So with that said, when you think about that segment of brothers out there who, who may have gone through this, but have never really openly discussed it, whether it's been at all or maybe only a select few know about it, but they're still struggling, they're still dealing with it. Again, and this is to the panel, like what could we do? What would be the solution or some suggestions to a solution of providing a safe space for men who have gone through or dealing with the quote unquote hidden traumas, like the molestation, like the physical abuse, or some type of abuse of some sort of that nature, the more extreme things. What is the solution? What is the answer? What is the starting point for us to create that space that will draw men who are dealing with that right now? They want to get up out of this bondage, but they just don't know where to go. They don't know what are the resources out there. What does that safe space look like? What can we do to provide that safe space, whether it's in the church, whether it's in the community? What suggestions would you have that you think are good, or that you already know of that exist, and maybe there's some brothers out here that just don't know about it? Safe spaces to go to talk about that. I don't know if Hilton, I don't know if you're back yet. If you are, feel free to chime in on this. He may still be having some technical issues on his end. Brother Boland, what's your thoughts on this?
I can't say that I have a particular strength or background in this, other than just my own experience dealing with some nothing on the scale that we're talking about. But I just would really echo what Dr. Gregory had just nailed it. I think that's exactly why people don't want to talk about it. My background has been on mental health. There's a big stigma around that, and a lot of people don't want to talk about that because it's embarrassing, and it makes people feel like there's something fundamentally wrong with them, and people just won't take me seriously or respect me or anything like that anymore. And no easy answers, except part of our solution. I think for the average listener out there, I think it's the courage to begin talking about it, to seek out somebody that you feel like you can trust in ministry or otherwise. And it's an act of courage to even start the first conversation, put a toe in the water. And certainly that's something that my wife and I did. And it was an act of courage. And we chose to become advocates and examples of being willing to talk about tough stuff that can be embarrassing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's a good point, and part of the reason why I went to you, because I think about your story. When you shared your story with us, that was in essence, in many ways, it was a hidden trauma that you were dealing with. Nobody knew what you were going through at home, with your wife and the challenges that came along with that, and so. But eventually you arrived at a point where you felt comfortable, or you saw an opening for a safe space to be able to say, you know what, let me put this out here, not only to inform and educate, but to also at the same time to seek out some healing, a pathway of healing for me to be able to process all of this. And, because I love my wife, but at the same time, I'm dealing with a whole lot, like that's something that's not the traditional subject matters that people usually talk about when they talk about the strains in a marriage or anything like that. So that's why I was, and again, I know all the brothers online, or even those who are listening, haven't necessarily had a chance to hear your full story, but, I think, hidden traumas can come in a variety of different ways. Sure. And, but there, it is, I think the safe space first step is trying to identify who that person is, or what organization exists that welcomes you being able to come into that space, come onto that platform, and be able to open up, feeling confident, even if you don't have 100% certainty, but feeling confident that this is a place that has been specifically designed to receive me with all my frailties, all my traumas, all my hurts, all my pains, and know that I can speak to them in a transparent and open way without the fear of judgment. And it is a gamble, especially if you've never had somebody in your life you've never had that, and we've talked about that so far in the show about, you know, if you've never grown up with somebody that you could look up to or that you could trust with your truth, what do I do with that? You know, how do I navigate that? How do I work that out?
Right.
And that's why, you know, though, you know, we're all men of faith on this, you know, on this call, and that's why we speak about so boldly, so strongly, not to pressure anybody, but to let you know that, you know, it begins with a relationship with Christ. If you have that, it opens up a whole new world to you, a whole new pathway of understanding and experiencing love unconditionally in a way that you've never felt that before.
Yeah.
But you have to try. You know, this is what we say: try Jesus. You got to try it. And I figure like this: if nothing else has worked, what you got to lose? If nothing else has worked, if you're hearing men who look like you, who talk about experiences and challenges and traumas and things of that nature that they've gone through, like we all have, and we're saying to you, to, you know, to those within the sound of my voice, to those who tuned in before, that hey, we've been through it too, in a variety of different ways, but we serve a God who, when we trusted in him, when we turned over to him, we cast our burdens onto him, he showed us in a way that only he could, that he had our backs 100%, that he understood, and he didn't just say it in words, but that he showed it in actions, that he understood and he was there for us. It's a feeling that it's hard to even put into words. It's one of those, if you know, you know. But we speak about him in conjunction with the conversational topics that we're having this evening, because we want those within the sounds of our voices to understand that you're going to deal with some life challenges, even some hidden traumas that are just bigger than you, that are bigger than your physical, emotional, mental capabilities to handle on your own strength, on your own terms, but that there is a God that can that will embrace all of that, and you with it, and help you navigate and work through all of that, and become a better person as a result of the pain that you thought was, couldn't be overcome, the struggle that you thought couldn't be survived, the challenges that you thought couldn't be turned around. He can do that for you. So, I think if there's a first step in that regard for the hidden traumas and creating that safe spaces, is identifying who you need. Yes, God has equipped some of us to be, skilled in ways to be experts on certain subject matters, and if you connect with those respective individuals, they can help guide you as well. So it's kind of can go hand in hand, but that's definitely something we want to keep in mind. And again, our platform this evening is a perfect example of safe space platform. Brothers who feel comfortable having these conversations, sharing our own personal testimonies as we talk about the various topics. These things are key. These things are important that we do, not to put on a show, not to put on a facade, but to let you know that, again, kind of go back to the theme of the conference, men hurt too, in a variety of different ways, on a variety of different levels. And, and it's okay. It's okay. That's the simplest way to put it, that it's okay to feel, to experience the hurts that you're feeling. It's just not okay for you to stay there. If there's it's not okay for you to marinate in that thing, because that's what the enemy wants you to do, is to stay stuck. Don't stay there. You want to look for an opportunity to get up out of that situation and work towards the healing process, so that you can, overcome it and can, move forward.
Hey, could I add a follow-on thought there?
Absolutely.
Jeff?
Absolutely.
So, I think some folks who are struggling with this trauma and pain, what they're going through can interfere with their experience with God, can interfere with their ability to feel good emotion, even interfere with the influence of the Holy Spirit. I think it's a real thing. I experienced it. And I think that talking to a safe person with, good values, and ideally a person of faith who understands God, can be that person to help break that, to stand in for God, to help break through. Stephen Covey referred to being understood as emotional oxygen. I like that. I think it's true.
Yes.
I had people reach out to me because of the book that we had written about marriage and mental health and so forth. And this one brother had this phone call with him. I could literally hear his change in tone and him exhaling and him telling me, I can't tell you that in 15 minutes you have done more to validate that somebody understands what I'm going through and believes me. And that was a huge step forward and a relief for that person. So just to share that as a little anecdote of how beneficial it can be when you do take that initial step to just talk to somebody. It can feel so amazingly good and begin clearing up a lot of emotional log jams that are interfering with your ability to communicate with God, to think clearly, and all those things.
I totally agree. Totally agree. That's good stuff. Good stuff. One other topic I wanted us to try to cover with the time that we have remaining. We talked about earlier about growing up in the home without your father, or whether he was physically not present, or maybe he was present but not the emotional connection wasn't quite there. For those of us who grow up without our dads, of course, the default for many of us ends up being in the single parent home where mom is the one that's raising us. And while many of us may have great stories, I know I do, having grown up in a single parent household, with my mom being at the lead. I had a wonderful relationship with my mom, but even with the relationship that I had with my mom, who I love dearly, all the way to the very end, my biggest cheerleader, my ride or die. There are certain mother-son conflicts that can arise in that relationship. In some instances, those mother-son conflicts can lead to broken or even complicated mother-son relationships that can deeply affect how men see women and themselves, because you have the mom who's, in that scenario, she's trying to raise her son, and in many ways feeling the need to have to carry both roles. I'm trying to be mom and I'm trying to be dad all at the same time. So she's trying to take on a role that she's not built to take on, because only a father can be a father, not, but mom is trying to do what she can do to kind of help carry it through. So with that said, when we talk about that mother-son dynamic, in what ways would you say, and I'm gonna throw this question to Hilton, in what ways would you say does a strained mother-son relationship impact a man's ability to love or trust women?
That's tough. So I think that inability to love women, it comes from, the balance is so off from that perspective that when we grow up, we like women from a different perspective. And then a lot of the times we look for our moms in other women, and then we look for them to be our moms as well. Like if you come up into a 2-parent household, I mean, it's fine that we look for our moms and women, but we don't necessarily look for the women to be our moms. But because we only know parental guidance from a female's perspective, we're kind of looking for that same type of leadership, so to speak, in the women that we go after, which can put a strain on it, because now she has to play wife and she has to play mother at the same time. And that can be a strain from that perspective. And it can be the man's truth. And because he lacks the knowledge of not knowing the difference between the two, that can put a strain on the relationship as well. That's just from a general perspective. Now, specifically, there's some men who have made that transition and found other leaders in their life to kind of not so much co-parent, but to mentor them and be the example of what a balanced marriage should be. And people and some men, take that example and use that as an example of how his marriage should be. So some men are blessed to have other mentors in their life, or big brothers in their life that could teach them some things about marriage or get into a relationship with another woman. But from that environmental perspective, we only have that one truth, and then we have to go and find truth in terms of how to deal with it, because it can most of the time it does put a strain on relationship. Even women who don't have fathers, they can put a strain on a relationship as well when two people come together and don't have that knowledge of how to really behave and conduct themselves in a marriage or a relationship.
So I want to throw a follow up to what you just said, speaking directly to the strained relationship, because one of the common strains that you find, if such a situation exists between the mother and son, and it's a strained relationship, one of the common scenarios is the son actually blaming his mother for the
Yeah.
absence of his father.
Yeah.
So to that mom, any moms that are listening who have been blamed for, by the son for his dad not being around, or to that son who's experiencing the hurt of, and maybe perhaps struggling with forgiving his mom for what he believes is her fault. What would you say to the mom? What would you say to the son who's struggling to forgive?
I probably would go to the son first, before I go to the mom. And well, depending on what age, well, if the son is growing up and blaming the mom, then he's of age to be able to understand some stuff. And then I would tell him to try to find some balance and see and not put all the responsibility on the mom, and get him to see that dad has some responsibility in this too, because the two people didn't make the child. The mom didn't make the child by herself, right? And so I would go to the son first to try to tell him, if you really want to know what happened, do understand that there's two sides to both stories, and find out why your dad wasn't there before you start shifting the blame. So I would work with the son a lot, like in counseling sessions, I work with the son a lot just to try to get him to see another perspective. Mom, I would say, try to understand the son's perspective. Don't try not to be as defensive in terms of trying to understand his perspective, because the more defensive an argument becomes, the more defensive the son will come as well. So I would implore the mom to try to exercise some emotional intelligence, and as it relates to what her son is going through. But with the sons, I have to teach more emotional intelligence and ultimately emotional maturity to get them to understand that empathy allows you to see both sides of the story. And subjectivity always is going to lead to you seeing it from your own perspective and not embracing other perspectives from that. So, yeah.
That's great stuff. I love that response, and I want to throw a different angle to you, Dr. Gregory. Another common example when we talk about that strained relationship with mother and son happens when dad's not around and son feels like mom is putting pressure on him almost to take the place of dad. Not so much from a romantic standpoint, but you the man of the house, so the weight on him is to economically provide. The weight on him is to be her company when she doesn't have anybody to be with. The weight is on him to always do things that please her, even if it's not so much that he's doing anything wrong, but if he doesn't do it her way, then she feels rejection. She feels some kind of way. So he's feeling obligated to always have to please mom to help her heal from something that is, the absence of the dad for whatever the reason he's absent. Like, what would you say to that mom who might be doing that, with regards to her son, and even to the son, how he should receive that when his mom may be putting some pressures on him that he doesn't feel like, hey, I'm just a kid. I'm just trying to grow up. I don't feel like I should have that weight, but I feel guilty, even to a certain degree, to have to carry on the burden in absence of dad being around.
First, I will acknowledge both of their hurt, both of the void that is there. Without acknowledging that, we can't properly address the wound. when you first go into the hospital, you have to explain to the physician or to the medical professional, hey, at this point in my body, it's breaking down and it's hurting. So address first the accountability and understanding where it hurts. Secondly, the way that I was trained. I was trained by my father-in-law, who is a licensed therapist and who is a phenomenal one. And the way that my wife and I were trained under him is we lead with understanding and grace and not with a mallet of judgment. With that being said, it is natural for a son to want to protect his mama. Natural, whether the father's in the house or whether the father is not in the house. It is natural. I'm in the house and I have 3 boys. And if my wife wants to go somewhere, they're like, where you going, mama? They naturally are just that pit bull, that just protective nature that is already inside of them. With that being said, and it's going to sound harsh, but it is not fully their responsibility quite yet to take on that type of role with their mother in that sense as they are developing. Do I believe that they are to have more responsibilities? Yes. Do I believe that they need to mature and take on some more things? Absolutely. But the burden of taking them on in that sense is slightly unfair to the young man who is still navigating the waters of their own life. But I do believe there is a sense of that we do need to take care of our mothers at a certain point. I truly do. My wife told me the other day that she's done some research. There is not one single older folks home in Africa. Why? Because there's a sense of family and a sense of pride over there in the continent that I'm not throwing you away just because you're elderly. You're my mother. I'm going to take care of you. And we've lost that in that sense of that they are beyond a treasure that God has given to us. That we have a sense of taking care of. It was so important, Minister Joseph, that one of the last sayings, that 7 last sayings that Jesus said on the cross was to make sure that his mother was taken care of. He said, mother, behold thy son, son, behold thy mother. It was that important to Jesus to make sure his mama was okay before he left and descended to heaven. So it is natural for us to want to protect our mother. On the vice versa, on the other side of the coin, it is natural for a woman to want to be protected, to want to be taken care of, to want to be sheltered, to want to be able to say, you know what, I am okay. And if the man that I chose to lay down with to have this offspring is not there, I'm going to find it. It's going to want and desire is going to be directed in some way, shape, or form in somewhere else. And it happens sometimes, a lot of times, to be with our sons. And you know what? It's not all the time, because there are some phenomenal women that don't do that. There are some phenomenal women. But here's the point is they've done the work. They recognize it and they've done the work and they've taken the accountability and they sought out counsel and they've gone through those things. And those women that hasn't, there's still nothing wrong with you. It's still a natural desire to have that and to be that. But it is also, and you don't know what you don't know. Because what if those women didn't have a father in the home? So they don't know what it is to have protection. They don't know what it is to have provision. They don't know what it is to have a healthy man's touch. All they know is loud screaming and yelling. All they know is furniture being tossed around to and fro. All they know is abuse. And so it is natural for a woman to want to feel that way. But also, too, I want them to feel grace and have understanding that, because you know what? Mamas are amazing, amazing people. I truly believe, this is just me, it's not biblical, so let me put that stamp out there. I truly believe that mothers have a certain signature of prayer that the father listens to. I believe, because a lot of us brothers that are on this call are here because of a mama's prayer. A lot of us are here is because a mother stood in the gap. A mother turned down a plate when we were hungry. She took food out of her mouth and gave it to us. A mother, clothed us when she didn't have it. A mother stayed up and did projects with us in school to make sure that we did okay. A mother, said no to a dress to make sure that we have basketball shoes or cleats or whatever, so we can have those extracurricular activities. And what that sign is of putting that responsibility on a son, know what that is saying emotionally? I'm tired. I'm exhausted. That's really what they're saying. I'm tired. I'm hurting. And I am lonely. If we can acknowledge that in a healthy way, I believe both parties can understand each other from a different perspective to say, you know what? My mama was just human and was just trying to survive. Was just she was left with lemons, and somehow she was asked to make a lemonade gourmet meal out of it.
Love that, and I co-sign to that. Like you said, I've had the pleasure of having a loving, caring mother who, like you said, gave her all, gave her last. So everything that I am this day, I owe in many ways to the sacrifices that were made because of my mom, and I know I'm not alone in speaking that. So as we're in our final minutes of our broadcast this evening, I want to make sure that we leave our listeners, particularly our men, with some moments of encouragement, some final words. So I just want to kind of go around, and I'll start with you, Brother Melvin. What message would you give to a man that's listening right now who feels broken but unseen? What would be your those few words of encouragement that you would have for him?
Well, first and foremost, pray. Seek some wisdom from your Bible. Find a good friend that you can confide in that won't go and spread your business around. That you can feel comfortable sharing some things with. Yeah.
Great. I don't know if Brother Bolin is still with us. If you are still with us, my brother, what would be your final words of encouragement to the men?
I am still here. I think the message that's coming out from me is the courage to take a step and to be open with somebody, and to take that as a step that's getting closer to God by trusting that God can lead you to somebody that can help, and to know that there is great peace in being open with somebody, and that God wants to help you, and he's placed a lot of talented, loving people around you.
Well said. Brother Hilton, what you got? I'm a brother who feels broken, and I'm feel unseen. What's your words of encouragement to take away from tonight?
Give yourself some grace. Love yourself through those times. Those dark moments when you're feeling inadequate. Love that part of yourself as well. Don't neglect or avoid the part of yourself that's broken. Learn how to love your brokenness, and learn how to love yourself through your brokenness. Because only when you discover and embrace your darkness can you see the true power of your light. Love yourself as Jesus loves you, as God loves you. God loves all of you, including your brokenness, including your inadequacies, including your flaws. And one thing that we should learn is how to love ourselves through that as well, and not be so hard on ourselves. Give yourself a break.
All right. Well said. And finally, Dr. Gregory, I'm broken. I feel unseen. What's your parting words of encouragement for me?
Yeah, so you're broken, but you're not busted. You're broken, but you're not discarded. I'm reminded of a certain Japanese art form called kintsugi. Please forgive me if I mispronounce it. But it is an art form of which they take broken pottery pieces and they form it together. But the bonding agent that which the pieces are put back together is gold. So you have an outlay of gold that is surrounding the broken pieces, and it makes it the shape and the figure it once was, but then now it's of more value because the gold has been interjected into the broken places. Jesus' blood that was shed on Calvary's cross is that very gold that has been interjected into those broken places. He's making you anew because he desires your broken pieces. When people want to discard you and throw you away because you're broken, it's a prerequisite to sit at the table to go after one. I'm reminded that after he was resurrected, he took Thomas's hand and he thrust it in his side to show them that, yes, I too was broken. He was a broken Christ for a broken body, but so that we can be reconciled back with the Father. You're broken, but you're not busted.
Love that. Love that. And I would say for myself, we all go through some challenging times. We all have some frailty, some imperfections, some traumas, some challenges that we've been through. And from all of that, you might feel a sense of lost. But I just want you men to know that just because you feel lost does not make you a lost cause. You need to understand the difference. That is one thing to be lost. It's one thing to be a lost cause. You are not the latter. See, when you're lost, you can be found. When you're lost, you can be brought on track. You can be discovered. You can be located. You're not a foregone conclusion. You're not a no coming back type situation. And so, as long as you understand that there is a pathway of recovery, there is a pathway of redemption, that there's nothing that you could have done or nothing that you failed to do up to this point, that there's no bounce back, no snap back, no turnaround from that. But it does begin with a relationship. And that relationship that I'm speaking of is a relationship with God. You got to have that. We're not telling you something that we heard. We're telling you something that we know firsthand from personal experience. We're not trying to preach to you. We're not trying to come off as if we're holier than thou and we got it all right and perfect, because we are still a work in progress. But we understand, even though we may not have always understood, we understand we're at a point in our lives where we understand that this relationship is necessary. It's the catapult. It's that jumpstart that we need to get to where we need to get to where we ultimately have to get to. It is the trigger, if you will. It's the facilitator of us initiating that healing process that's necessary. So don't count yourself out. I don't care what the world says. I don't care what the stats say. He has the final word. And that's the only word that matters the most. And he loves you unconditionally. He wants nothing but the best for you. And so that's why in the midst of this conversations like this that need to be had, we would be doing you a disservice if we just made you think that we were just a group of smart men who just knew all the answers. Trust, it starts with that relationship. And just like we have it and we're benefiting from it, we want you to benefit from it as well. So we encourage you to take heed to that, stay in prayer, love yourself. Don't give up on you, and trust and believe that, there is a way for you to still be a great and awesome, wonderful, empowering individual. You're already that. You just don't know it. Because you maybe have allowed your circumstances or let other people from the outside make you think otherwise. And we're here to tell you different. Again, you might feel lost, but you are not a lost cause. So with that said, we thank you so much for being with us this evening. Thanks to all my brothers who joined on the conversation tonight. This has been great as always. We do this on the last Sunday of each month, Facebook Live, for us to just, again, engage in conversations like this on a platform, safe setting for men to talk about these things. Of course, special thanks to Minister Stephanie M. Seaton for even allowing such a platform to exist under her umbrella of leadership and ministry, giving us this opportunity, giving us this space to do what we're able to do on these Sundays evenings, taking time out of your busy schedule to hang out with us and just join in and listen. And so we don't take that lightly. We appreciate it greatly. One last reminder before we close out, we do have the book anthology. The Minister Stephanie M. Seaton, the Men Hurt Too book anthology, has been expanded until December, and it's going to be published on Father's Day. It is 50% off until the 30th. So please check out the promotion on Eventbrite. So if you're interested in sharing your story in this anthology, it's a wonderful opportunity to not only have a chance to tell your story, but more importantly, for you to be a blessing to some other brother who needs to hear your story. Just the same type of things that we've talked about tonight. Everybody has a story to tell. So if this is you, which I know it is you, and you want to be a part of this wonderful experience, definitely take part in that. Check out the opportunity and get tapped in accordingly. So again, as always, we thank you for joining us this evening. We look forward to seeing you next month on the fourth Sunday of the month to do it all over again, where we'll have some awesome panelists, awesome conversation, and again, just pouring into men in a way that only we know how, and that's to be transparent, to be vulnerable, to be uplifting and encouraging, to be inspiring as best as we know how, but most importantly, putting God at the center of it all. So with that said, brothers, thank you for being with us this evening. Blessings to you, and until we see each other again, coverings over everything that you touch and everything that you do and all of your families. And to our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. We appreciate your participation in our platform this evening, and we look forward to seeing you next time, and encourage others to join us if they haven't had a chance to check us out yet. So until next time, you take care and have a great rest of your evening.
If you would like to be a guest on the Stephanie M. Seaton Sunday Show, email Stephanie at stephanieMSeatontheauthor@gmail.com.